How did I get my pink back after becoming a mom? What does it mean to get your pink back? So I learned recently that when flamingos have their young, they lose their pink. The pink drains from them. I'll see if I can find an image of it. And then slowly, as their young get older and become a little bit more independent, they get their pink back. And I feel as if I am in the chapter, the stage, the season of my life where I am getting my pink back. And I want to share with you how I have gone from my gray, drained season to now getting my pink back. Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Bridget. I love all things makeup and skincare, and I love sharing with you all what my life looks like. Today is going to be a little bit of a chattier video where I'm going to put on my makeup. I've already done all my skincare and prep, but I want to share with you about how I've come to create my channel, because a big part of that is getting my pink back. So if you're new, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. I would share it, subscribe. It really helps my channel out. And let's jump into the makeup. I'm going to put my makeup on. I'm not going to necessarily say everything that I'm putting on. I'll have everything as always in the description box below, including everything that I'm wearing. I'll link what I can, but I just want to share with you my journey to motherhood, what impact it had on me and my mental health, and how I'm doing now and how I'm getting my pink back. As we jump into the makeup, I want to start talking about my journey to motherhood, which was not straightforward. I'm going to start off my primer. Barry and I got married when I was 24. We knew we didn't want to start our family that young. I think I've said in a previous video, we got married younger than we would have necessarily planned because of immigration reasons, basically. I needed to be able to stay in the country. And we had a lovely wedding and we knew we wanted to stay together. So we moved up our plans, but we knew that we were not yet financially or personally ready to start our family. So we waited until we were 28. We owned our home. We were in stable jobs and we felt ready. When we were 28, we decided now is the time. And I think like a lot of women and girls, I just sort of thought it will just happen. Well, newsflash, it didn't just happen. And after about 6 months of trying, nothing happened. We spoke to a doctor and was told that I had to bring my BMI down. So I did. I knew at this point that I had, going in with the e.l.f. Soft Glam Satin Foundation, I love this one. I knew I had endometriosis. I'd had to have a surgery a couple of years earlier to remove a cyst. So I should have had some interventions earlier, but I didn't. So went back, tried for another 6 months, nothing. Long story short, for 5 years, Barry and I went through unexplained infertility, multiple miscarriages, the likes. It was really hard. It was stressful. It was emotionally devastating. It was a lot. It was pretty rough on both of us as a couple. I'm glad we had waited to start trying because we were really solid in our relationship. Because I think had our relationship been a little bit more unstable or newer, or we hadn't known each other as well as we did, I don't know that we would have been able to sustain that really difficult journey, especially with the multiple losses that we experienced. Ultimately, our final loss that we experienced was just as we moved into the last house that we lived in before we moved into this house here. I literally lost that baby, that pregnancy, on the Wednesday when I was traveling for work, which was horrific. I was in a hotel and we were moving house on the Friday. And I was very, very fortunate that our GP, our local GP, who I hadn't even registered with yet because we were moving from a city to a village, so we were having to change GPs, sort of took mercy on me. They saw me, I also had tonsillitis, and cared for me and gave me a referral to the Tommy's charity, which I believe is a national charity here in the UK. If it is, I will link it. Even if they're just in the Midlands, I'll still link it because they're an incredible charity who provide care and support for fertility and baby loss. And I received incredible support from them with that last loss, because that loss I had at 12 weeks. That was hard, and through the care and support with the Tommy's Tommy's Charity and our local hospital, I was then able to successfully get pregnant in 2018. And fortunately, our wonderful son Lachlan was born after a very, very difficult pregnancy where I had hyperemesis gravidarum, I think is how you pronounce it, HG, which is severe sickness throughout pregnancy. I lost an incredible amount of weight in that pregnancy, in and out of hospital as an inpatient. It was incredibly stressful for both Barry and I because this was our long-awaited pregnancy and I wasn't able to have that sort of pregnant glow. I didn't feel I was able to enjoy this pregnancy the way that for 5 years I'd been anticipating. So that was hard, but I was just so grateful to be pregnant and to be carrying a baby who was healthy, even though I wasn't particularly healthy. So I then had a very, very difficult delivery, but fortunately, thank goodness, it resulted in a healthy live birth, which I was ever so grateful for, but I was very, very, very ill, incredibly anemic, and Lachlan was healthy, but he had issues. He had quite a severe tongue tie, which wasn't picked up until I think about 12, 19 days later. Yeah, that was really hard. I'm using the CoverGirl True Blend Skin Enhancer in the shade Defined. I'm loving this. I reached out for help because feeding wasn't going particularly well, and I'd done an NCT course. So for anyone who's not in the UK or doesn't know what NCT is, it stands for it's a National Child Care Trust. These classes that you can sign up for, and really, in hindsight, you don't pay. The classes are fine and great, but really it's the people that are the gold dust. And I am still very good friends with the people who I met in NCT, especially, there was a core group of 4 of us. Lachlan is in school with 2 of the children who were products of that NCT class. And, we still stay in touch. And there was a group of 4 of us that we got through that first year together. Blood, sweat, and tears, and sleepless nights. I think some of what caused that first year to be really difficult for me, especially with regards to the feeding, was some of what we learned in NCT, and that's sort of I need to gather my thoughts here. Cautionary tale, a word to the wise of somebody who's been there, is that we were taught in NCT, this is the Milani Cheek Kiss in 110 Hey Honey. We were taught very much breast is best. We were not told or taught anything about bottle feeding, sterilizing. We weren't given any information or guidance about anything to do with bottle feeding at all. It wasn't discussed or covered in any way, but we spent several sessions on breastfeeding. We had a breastfeeding counselor come in, but yeah, we spent a lot of sessions on breastfeeding, which is fine, and we all had the hope and expectation to be able to breastfeed, but newsflash, it doesn't always work. And that was not communicated to us in an honest and transparent way. And, with the best endeavors and intentions in the world, things don't always go the way you plan. And I think that wasn't what I didn't know. I was a first-time mom, and it was a very longed for pregnancy, and I just wanted everything to be picture perfect. And for those of you who don't know, a tongue tie is when the little thing underneath your tongue is too short or too stiff, and a baby cannot stick their tongue out sufficiently far to be able to successfully breastfeed. A lot of mums will give up because it's incredibly painful when you are trying to breastfeed a baby with a tongue tie. I ended up black and blue. It was horrible. I reached out I had a contact in the feeding team at my local hospital because I don't know why or how, but I just my spidey sense thought that I might have a problem with feeding, or it was a concern that I had. And I reached out to the feeding consultant that I had been put in touch with before. And she fortunately said, "Can you get to the hospital today?" I did. They diagnosed the tongue tie. They severed the tongue tie, which was great. So now, I'm going in with the CoverGirl True Blend Skin Enhancer in the blush shade Nude Flush, which was great. But she also and Lachlan had been a very irritable baby, is I think putting it mildly. He just wouldn't settle. He would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry, and basically cry until he exhausted himself and passed out. And my mom was there with me. My mother-in-law was there with me, both of whom had two children. And they were both kind of like, pass, I don't know. I've never seen anything like this before. We can't help you. We don't know. And we all tried settling him and nothing was helping. And by this point, I was exhausted. I was anemic. I now know I was in the throes of very, very severe postnatal depression, postpartum depression for those of you who are in the US. I developed postnatal, so trigger warning for anyone, we're going to talk about mental health. I probably should have said that at the beginning. I'll put it on the screen. I developed I developed a form of where I couldn't put food in my mouth. I couldn't eat. I couldn't handle the sensation of having any food in my mouth because I was so traumatized by what was happening. My mental health, my hormones were just all over the place. And I was so completely and totally unprepared that this was a potential outcome of the birth of my first child. I was so expecting to feel this immediate love and the happy hormones and the endorphins, and I had no idea that I could feel this intense sadness, overwhelming grief is sort of how I felt. And I was so disappointed in myself that I wasn't having this postnatal experience that I had longed for years, hoped for years. And it wasn't what I saw on the TV, read about in the books, saw in the magazines. It wasn't what I wanted. And I was angry. And I think that was just a perfect storm. I was very fortunate. I got support from the perinatal mental health team at the hospital. I got all the support at the right time, and I was very, very well looked after. I got better. And I'll insert some pictures here of me in those weeks and months after giving birth. My skin was gray. I was clearly not well physically. I was clearly not well mentally. And the help and support of my friends that I made in my NCT group were critical. The perinatal mental health team were critical. But I wasn't me anymore. I was looking after a child who I now know had severe food intolerances, which we've been able to get past. He had severe reflux, basically didn't sleep for a year. And this wasn't, not what I'd signed up for, because I don't think that's the right wording, but this wasn't what I had imagined. And a lot of, I had one GP that said, parents of longed for children, was how she worded it, can look at parenting through rose-colored glasses. And that just was a knife right to the heart, because I was like, so this is my fault that he won't sleep. And that was really, really hard. But I kept going. My friends kept me going. And I don't think I ever really got my pink back after that first pregnancy and after Lachlan was born. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. The pandemic happened when Lachlan was 15 months old. So that was hard. And it was hard for everyone, regardless of what age you are, what stage your children were in. It was just hard for the whole world. And then Joseph was born when Lachlan was just 3 years old. Their birthdays are 9 days apart. So 3 years and 9 days apart. That was a whirlwind. And my pregnancy with Joseph was the same as Lachlan. Very, very severe sickness. It was hard, but I kept going. I also had a toddler at the time. I'm going to go in with my concealer. This is the Kosas. I can never remember the name of this one. I think it's the creamy concealer in shade 1.5. I can't remember what it's called. I've got a mini to just sort of try it out. I had a much, much easier delivery, significantly easier delivery with Joseph, which just made things so much easier. Joseph was an incredibly easy baby. I think you have one way, one the other way. That's what I've heard. I'm sure that's not universally true. I'm sure some people will say, no, all of my kids were difficult or all of my kids were easy, but I had one that was a very, very difficult baby and a very easy toddler. Lachlan was a breeze as a toddler, which made that next period of Joseph being a baby and Lachlan being a toddler was relatively calm and peaceful and easy. I mean, it was still hard. Lachlan, Joseph, babies are still hard work. There's the nighttime feeds, but, feeding with Joseph was a lot easier. He also had a tongue tie, but I picked it up and I knew and I saw and we just got it all sorted a lot faster and easier. I think people who have multiple, more than one child, you just are more confident the second time round. You know your body. It's not all foreign. It's not the first time. So things were just that little bit easier. Then also, the the jump from one child to two children is not double the work, it is quadruple the work. But yeah, I'm very, very lucky that I have an incredibly supportive family. My in-laws there are no words for how incredible they are. So I'm going to set this with the e.l.f. Halo Glow Setting Powder. I mean, my life, I've said this a number of times, my in-laws facilitate my life, and I'm ever, ever, ever so grateful for them. They're, phenomenal and incredible. So yeah, that was a lot easier. But then when Joseph was 6 months old, I was visiting my mother and my stepfather in America, and just by weird coincidence, while I was there, I was notified by my aunt on my biological father's side that my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack, which was unnerving and difficult. I had a very tumultuous, estranged relationship with my father, which I'm not going to get into here, but I'd been estranged from him for about 12 years before his passing, but it was very difficult still to hear of his passing. He was 64 years old when he passed away. And it was strange that my mother, my sister, and I just all happened to be together when it happened, considering the fact that we all live so far away, which was also, I think, a bit of a blessing. But yeah, that was equally difficult. And when I flew back to the UK after that visit, I think from the sort of stress of that, threw my back out. Also, traveling solo, because Barry didn't come with me on that trip, traveling solo internationally with a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old probably also contributed to throwing my back out. But that was a stressful time. And in and amongst all of that, I developed postnatal psychosis, which is no joke. So I've experienced postnatal depression, and I also developed postnatal psychosis, which I'm not going to go into too much because it is a very serious condition. It impacted me enormously, and it was very scary. I reached out for help immediately, and I just want to say that if anyone is ever concerned that they are experiencing something like this, please reach out for help. I did. I'm very fortunate that I did. I was nervous. I thought that they would take my children away, but I was supported by my local mental health team, and nobody took my children away. I was supported in my home with my children, with my family, and we are all doing very well. And I'm in a very, very strong place with my mental health now. But that was no joke. In the immediate, it lasted for a very short time. In terms of the actual psychosis, was probably 5 to 7 days. But because I was so honest and transparent with my mental health team, and they were aware, given my previous postnatal depression, I was at risk of this type of occurrence. I was getting all the support. So I would say being as honest and open with your midwife, with your doctor, with your GP is so essential. But I was probably at my lowest of low at that point. I wasn't fueling my body appropriately. I wasn't hydrating appropriately. I was still breastfeeding. I was looking after a baby and a toddler. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And again, my friends and my family support is what got me through. So when did I start to get my pink back? I went back to work when Joseph was 9 months old, and the company that Barry and I both work for were able to share parental leave. Barry was able to take the last 3 months of my parental leave at full pay, which is phenomenal. And I went back to work, which I was very happy to do. I think because I was going back to work, I started putting makeup on again, which I hadn't been doing through the entirety of either of my maternity leaves. And that small act of self-care, which I love makeup, obviously, that's what my channel is about. But that small act of self-care, of doing my skincare, putting my makeup on, I started to invest in myself again. And I started to see myself as who I was before children. And I'm never going to be Bridget pre-children, nor do I want to be. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I am a wiser, more full person, and that's part of growth and age is a gift. But I want to be a whole person. I don't want to be a shell. And that's how I started to get my pink back, and taking those little slivers of time. And it doesn't have to be a full face of makeup, because let's be honest, when you've got a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old, you don't necessarily have, the 20 minutes to apply a full face. But taking 5 minutes to apply a mascara, That's self-care and that's investment in yourself. And I started to do that. And as my children got older and more independent, I was able to invest more and more, and my self-care was able to grow. And my pink started ebbing back in little bits and bits. Right, I'm going in the Kosas Cloud Set and Candy. Just adds that little bit of brightening. I know we're not talking about the makeup, but the makeup is what gives me my pink. So when I started going back to work, and I was only going into the office one day a week because I was still breastfeeding at this point. So even though I was working and Barry was the primary caregiver for Joseph, I was home. So I was still feeding him 3 times a day. When I was in the office, I was pumping. Having that me time when I could be in the office and just be Bridget and not be Joseph and Lachlan's mom gave me that little bit of pink, being able to do the job that I'm paid to do and have adult conversations. And I know this isn't new information. And, so many people talk about life after motherhood and being able to have adult conversations and pee by yourself. For me, that wasn't the big part. The big part for me was the investment in self-care. And self-care isn't booking a weekend at a spa. For me, self-care was getting up that 15 minutes earlier to apply my makeup, getting up and sitting and watching the news by myself. That was what really contributed to me getting my pink back. Makeup by Mario, although I've heard people say it's Mario, I've struggled to say that. Soft Sculpt Bronzer in Light, sort of getting my hands into the makeup, exploring, trying, and sort of finding that artistry, so it doesn't have to be, if for you it's not makeup, if for you it's not skincare, if it's poetry, if it's reading, if it's painting, if it's DIY. I mean, I went through a phase where I was really into sewing, especially during COVID. I was sewing for the NHS and I was able to, I grew up sewing with my mom and things like that. And I was able to make scrubs. And that was something that I could do in between, during nap times and things like that. And that gave me those little bits of me time that just flooded me with that little bit of pink, that little bit of doing something for me that was so important and so essential that I don't think is talked about enough. And it's so sometimes we can feel that we have to ask for permission. And I want to get out of the habit of doing that. And I'm guilty of it as well. So this is a newer find as well. The Tower 28 Get Set Blush. And this is in Long Beach Iced Tea. I'm obsessed with this right now. But it's really pigmented, so you gotta go softly. It's really blurring. I just think saying, I'm just gonna go and take 10 minutes to do my skincare. Or whatever it is for you. But it's essential because I find that now that I'm doing this YouTube journey, I feel better equipped to be a present wife and mother and friend in person without sounding really cliche. It's filling up my cup. It's making me happy. It's making me engaged. It's giving me joy outside of the joy that I get from motherhood, outside of the joy that I get from work. Because, I know that some people do YouTube as a way to replace their full-time job. I'm not interested in that. This for me is a passion project, something that allows me to share my love, my enjoyment, my interest with other like-minded individuals. But also, I sometimes, when I just needed 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get a little infusion of pink, I would go to YouTube and I would watch Tati or Allie Glines or, Taylor Wynn or Jessica Braun and just see the makeup and the artistry and the fun. And that would just fill me up and give me some joy. And I now have the time to be able to create and be on the other side of the camera. And if my videos can do that for somebody else, that gives me even more joy. So if that's you, if you're in that season where you're making it from nap time to nap time, let me know, because I was there, I was you, and there is pink in your future. And it feels like one of my incredible, so we called our group, our WhatsApp group name was called Tiddlers, because we went to a mother and baby group on a Monday that was my lifesaver. It was my survival, and it was called Tiddlers. 4 of us went like clockwork every Monday. And she shared with me once, grew a fear of the nighttime because night times would feel so long when Lachlan wouldn't sleep. And she sent me a YouTube video, and if I can find it, I'll link it below. This is the Merit Solo Shadow in the shade Studio. I love this as my quick little one and done. A lot of people apply this with their fingers. I like to use a brush. So the video made me sob my little eyeballs out the first time I saw it because it just really hit a nerve, but it said, the nights are long, but the years are short. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it because it's so true. I mean, it could have been, it was a heartbeat ago that I broke out into tears, sobbing, thinking I've made it. I've nearly made it to my due date. I can give birth to this baby and he is at a healthy gestation. And that was 2 seconds ago, but he's 6.5. He's in year 1. This past school year has flown by, and he's not that screaming, crying baby anymore. He's a smart individual with a personality and strengths, and that's incredible. And I think that helps me with my pink, to see this incredible person who I've made. To go back 8 years ago, that seemed so far away. That was something that Barry and I were so longing for. And it's here, it's now. You know, we've got 2 of these incredible little humans. But that doesn't take away from the fact that being a mother, being a parent, being a carer, and whatever your path to motherhood is, takes a toll on your mental health. And acknowledging that doesn't take away from the love that you have for your children. And that was something that was really, really hard for me to acknowledge and accept, because I was so desperate to be a mother that I felt like I was being inauthentic to myself and my love for my children to say motherhood's really hard. Because I would feel like, but you desperately wanted this and it took you so long to get here. How dare you say that it's hard? But it is. And your whole life changes forever. And that's okay to admit. This is the ColourPop Super Shock Shadow in Ritz. And I'm just going to tap this on top of that Merit shadow. It's so hot in here right now that my camera is not loving it. Oh, I didn't tell you what I used on my brow. Maybelline Super Fluff. Love this. I have a new eyelash curler, Tower 28. Going in with the Tower 28 Make Waves mascara in Drift, which is the brown. Final touches, because this is the Blur CoverGirl Clean Fresh Yummy Blur in the shade Into the Blur. I'm loving this. I've been wearing this like most days. It's blurring, but so comfortable. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. And this is the Morphe Mini Continuous. I got it in a mini continuous setting mist. Love, 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 love. Zoom you back out. Oops, wrong way. So there we go. That is the final look. There we have it. This is how I have gotten back my pink. I tried to find a pink shirt. I don't wear a lot of pink. This is sort of a, I don't know, coral. I've had quite the journey to motherhood, and it has definitely taken me a long time to get back my pink. I'm still getting it back. I'm still working on it. I'm still a work in progress. I hope I always will be a work in progress. That's really the joy of life, is constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly evolving. But that I realized when I was thinking the other day about what prompted me to really want to start my channel, is that makeup and skincare and the process of application and learning and the artistry of application is what has helped me find me again in my journey of becoming a mother, and the time it took me to actually become a mother, and then finding myself in the rocky journey I've experienced of motherhood together with my mental health journey. And I really hope it's been helpful for you. I will put some resources below if you are also experiencing some of the difficulties that I've experienced with regards to mental health. I strongly encourage you to reach out and get support. I did, and it helped and changed my life for the better. Thank you so much for watching. I know that this has been a deeper, more difficult video where we've talked about some difficult subjects. If you've made it to the end, thank you so much. I'd like to do some more of these more like deep chats type videos where I put my makeup on and it's not necessarily all about the makeup, but where you can sort of get to know me a little bit more. If you've made it to the end, I deeply appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It really helps my videos and my channels out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.